Breakdown. 4 days of group stage play, all leading up to this. The first day of playoffs is upon us here at One Win Bombshell Volume 5. I'm ZP here with Jason Kaplan, and Jason, we are kicking off the day with a banger. It's going to be Virtus Pro versus the cross-continental team of Thanos.
Yeah, unless you're Rocker, then it's probably, a nice 4 or 5 a.m. wake up for him to get ready for the games. I'm not sure if they're going to be using him or Piggy, but I think the intention was to be using him. This can be a tough matchup, and we obviously saw this happen in the group stage. VP won 2-0 in pretty quick fashion, but VP losing out on that #1 seed because of Paravision. Very rough to see, because obviously one win spoiling the chance for VP to do so, where it would have come down to who won their games quicker. And I think our admins breathed a sigh of relief when VP lost the first match up against One Win.
But of course, before we get into it, we got to catch you up on what is all going on here at One Win Bombshell. First of all, the prize pool that the teams are competing for. And I got to tell you, Jason, it is a lot. It's $10,000 total, with $5,000 going to first place. The stakes here that are being competed for are quite significant.
Yeah, a lot of money to win here. And well, at least for this first match, and I believe the second match, you'll have 2 chances. You can technically lose out on one of these matches and still come back through the lower end of our bracket. The 3,000 for second place, 1,500 for third, and 500 for fourth, where Paravision are already sitting pretty in the money. But it's about what teams can join them, and not to mention which team's gonna be facing them. Actually, because the winner of this match will be going on to get play against Paravision right after, before we head into our One Win Aegis Aurora match in our, I guess, I don't know what you would call, I guess, our first match of the loser bracket. I guess is technically what you would say.
Yeah, I think for first lower bracket, I think would be the most accurate. If it's not, hey, we'll correct ourselves later. But also, in case you're wondering, all the teams are involved here. Obviously, we kind of teased that we're kicking off with VP versus Thanos, but this is where we were at after the group stage here. And, the group stage had a few surprises here, not the least of which is that I don't think a lot of people had Paravision being #1. They thought they'd be more towards #3. But the biggest surprise by far, Jason, and it's not even close, is how One Win, basically the favorite coming in, dropped quite significantly here. Part because of Thanos overperforming, and I think part because, One Win team really did need some time to figure out this patch.
Well, I think maybe realizing McGinnis Lash isn't the play would have been a good indicator for them. I think that one was quite obvious going into the patch as well. But yeah, definitely a struggle for them when it came to this event. They've been at the top of the table in EU for such a long time now, but having to go back and kind of revamp what they're going to be doing going forward, since they can't rely on that pocket, that great talent, that Yamato Calico play that they seem to always go for. Definitely a tough time for them, but also at the same note, Aegis Aurora had a massive glow up considering how they performed in the last One Win Bombshell. He's able to go even at 7 and 7 apiece, and a lot of that due to band wise and what he can do in these matches.
Yeah, and you take a look at it, there's definitely a big drop off between the top 5, the teams that are still, of course, in the tournament, and then the bottom 3, where CS Rejects, Lodos, they were the 2 teams that had to come in via the qualifiers, but in a way, you kind of saw why they were not one of the invited teams, where just newer to the scene, still a lot of rough edges, showed some flashes of light here and there, Jason, but in the end, a very stark divide between the top 5 and those that were underneath.
Yeah, I mean, it takes some time, but I think in a game like Deadlock, it's pretty harsh when there is a skill difference between 2 teams. It becomes very apparent in the game with the whole deny mechanics, and obviously when we get into like the mid game and the team fighting. But hey, we did see some glimpses of life for them. For me, seeing Force on CS Rejects had some pretty good play when it came to 7. But as we transition out into our schedule, what's going to be coming our way today, we do have honestly some very good matches.
Yeah, I mean, as we mentioned, we're kicking off with VP versus Thanos, and then after that, Paravision versus the winner of VP Thanos. And, if it does go to what you would expect in EU, like, let's say the ping is too much for Thanos and they end up falling to VP in the first set. I mean, the fact that we're opening the day with Paravision v VP right after, potentially, that it's a wild schedule. Like, it is packed. Like, both series, regardless of who wins, it's going to be a good time, Jason.
And you saw the last match. It was TBD versus TBD. What that's going to be, it's the winner of One Win Aegis Aurora up against the loser of VP and Thanos. So that will be the final match on how it ends up working out in the end. And obviously the last chance saloon for teams to advance on further to potentially get into our grand finals. But yeah, kicking things off with honestly, I don't know how this one's going to go. I would think we should be favoring Virtus Pro quite heavily in this one, because obviously last time they met up, it was a landslide for Virtus Pro. But hopefully Zeno doesn't say to his team, hey guys, now I want to keep farming. You guys keep fighting, buy me time. I want to get to 70,000 souls before I actually engage. Because that's not going to work out against VP. They're not going to let something like that happen.
Yeah, that was a bit of a ridiculous end to the group stage that we got there, where they do have they'd be having a little bit of fun on the Tenno side, where it's just like, what if we sacrifice the entire team for Xeno to get even more powerful? But yeah, I don't think we're going to be getting that level of messing around here against VP. A team that many people consider to be on top here in EU. But Jason, I'm excited to get into it. We're going to be getting the draft underway here soon, and we'll see just how the lessons from the group stage have played out.
And let's just have a little podcast here, because we don't know how long until we actually get into draft, and it's going to be to us the biggest changes from the patch that we've seen into, I guess, action when we've had these matches taking place. Obviously Pocket has been a big change. We still see him, I would say, an okay amount, but nowhere near as much as more of like a solid pick going into most of our games. We've also seen Calico fall off quite heavily. We've seen, I'd say, the rise of Yamato, the Geistflation, as you were talking about yesterday too. The Geist is being heavily more picked towards the very top of the table. So we see these like subtle changes, and we're seeing teams still adapt to them as games go on. And taking a look at some of the highlights we had specifically in that VP Thanos match, you can just kind of see how one side of the game was already a 40k lead 26 minutes in. And before we hop into like what we expect to see played, why don't we go back to what I was talking about with the patch and get your thoughts, EP?
Yeah, in terms of the patch, there were clear winners and losers, as there always are. But I mean, truthfully, relative to the patch, some heroes got hit way harder than others. I think probably the biggest victim by far, just given her relative high pick status into where she is now, has to be Calico, where Calico went from oftentimes picked in the first 3 picks for any given team, and now rarely picked. And when she does get picked, Jason, it is near the end of the draft. So Calico, by far the biggest hit. Pocket probably number 2 after, where Pocket went from a contested high pick to often not played, or also if he is played, it's toward the end. Other winners, though, in response, we touched on a little bit, where Yamato, one of the biggest winners. Geist, I think, to me, you touched on too, is that Geist is to me the biggest winner. Geist was always like good. I think we haven't really been into many metas where Geist wasn't valued in like the 4 or 5 slot for a team. But over and over again now, Geist is getting picked top 2 for most teams. That is how valuable she is. And also, I feel like the playmakers, Holiday and Paradox, have always been good and valued. But I'm not quite sure we've ever been in a meta where they've been so consistently picked 1 and 2. Like usually things like Mirage would have equal priority or higher priority. But even Mirage has like dropped a teensy little bit, Jason, relative to the playmakers and the very high value frontliners at the moment.
Yeah, I think we've kind of solidified on like what are the most valuable picks. I mean, obviously Mirage, you're talking about kind of maybe moving towards the not the initial pick, because we want to have one of those playmakers guaranteed. But we've also seen teams work around with the fact that sometimes they ban out Bebop and they ban out Holiday to really deny a team or I'd say really punishing them of like, hey, if you're not going to pick a playmaker in your top 3, we're going to screw you over, and you're not going to have any sort of playmakers on your roster for this match. So it's also helped force teams to be like, okay, we need to really guarantee one of these towards the top. But in our initial 6 picks, I feel like they've been relatively similar across 90% of our games. It's your Paradox, it's your Holiday. We're seeing Mirage at the top. We're seeing Yamato at the top. We're seeing Mo at the top. We're seeing Geist at the top, with a trickling in of like 1 or 2 more on top of that. And I think that's kind of the way the meta's gone. Whether or not we continue to see that as we see some adaptations in the meta, I don't know. But I still am firmly believing it's going to stay this way, actually, until we do have a new patch come in and change things up once again.
Now, I mean, there have been a few twists, like probably the biggest variation from the very top teams that we have here in the tournament would probably be One Win Team, where One Win Team, they're kind of going a little bit outside the norm, where they're ultra mega prioritizing Kelvin, like way more than other teams, purely to try and lock into Kelvin Shiv lane before the mid-stage bans, which, I still am not convinced is the right approach, but it is how One Win is generally valuing some of the hero drafts right now. So, but that's a very notable variation. But other than that, I feel like every other team is largely on the same page, as you mentioned.
Yeah, and if we talk about like the big winners besides heroes after the patch, I'd say Virtus Pro have for sure been, I think, the biggest winner by a large margin. We've talked so many times about how individually they have such a deep hero pool. When it comes into actually doing picks, you don't really know who's playing what, even when you have all 6 heroes picked, because they can still switch things around quite a bit. But I think that flexibility they had in their roster, where it might have hurt them a little bit in the last 3-4 weeks, constantly losing against one win. I think as the patches change, will consistently and often change, they're always going to be one of the teams that comes out the strongest, because they do have that depth within their pool, and we're seeing that lack of depth in the side of one win, as we saw in our standings.
Yeah, and I'm also curious a little bit. Well, I don't usually think this is as big of a thing as people sometimes think it may be, but we had a long group stage, Jason, and there's a lot to play for in the group stage, but there's always a possibility in Deadlock, and teams have actually complained about to me here and there, especially when you get into like show match formats and everything else, that every now and then teams will keep a little bit in the back pocket for playoffs, like a comp or a style that they wanted to go for, or a change in draft priority that was never seen coming. Like, one of the more interesting things is that I feel like Bebop has been in a more consistent spot, but Bebop's usually had value, Jason, getting picked around 5th or 6th for a team. I do wonder for a team like VP, where you have players like Dmov that just come in and crush on the Bebop. I wonder if you change up your priority a little bit going in the playoffs here, and you go, oh, you thought you could get rid of the Dmov threat on Bebop by doing the mid-hero bans, which usually is what happens, right? Where you go against VP, teams will often take away the Bebop in the middle bands. But you could have situations where teams that want to play something like that a little bit more actively go, haha, we're actually going to pick it in the top 3.
Yeah.
And now you have to deal with it where maybe you didn't think you would have to deal with it at all. So, even small changes like that may be, more of a thing as we get into, more definitive playoff play.
I mean, that's kind of the funny thing for VP and Dmov, is he's shown to be so good on Bebop the entire way through, not just in the very early game, that teams have to legitimately think about, like, do we take it away, whether it's banning it or picking it? And Dmov can play so many other heroes. It's really, in the end, not a big deal for them, because Virtus Pro will always be a team that locks in either Paradox or Holiday in their top 3 every single time to have that guaranteed playmaker. And if somehow both of those are taken away, I would expect to see them pick up a Bebop pretty early on, because every team out there is kind of relying on that. And I don't actually know how I feel about it, like long term, for like the health of Deadlock Esports, of having one of these heroes always played. But when we get more heroes into the game, we're looking at 25, 30, 40 heroes, there's going to be so many other types of comps that I think will develop that will counteract that initiate out of teams.
Well, I think right now we're in the stage of the game where, because as you mentioned, the heroes are a little bit limited, right? We're in an area where people are mostly drafting for power and not necessarily drafting to counter what the opponent is doing and going with a more cohesive draft strategy. Like, I think the closest we've gotten to a hero that you usually get to see picked as like a hard counter would be more, say, going Viscous versus the Moan Crow. That's a very clear reaction pick that we see quite a bit. But as the game evolves and as we do get more heroes, eventually we'll be in a world where you don't necessarily have to highly prio Holiday and Paradox, because there's going to be like another 4 or 5 different heroes that will fill the role of Holiday and Paradox. So it's more going to be about what's your overall team synergy. Like, I think the actual vision into the portal of the future of Deadlock is more so the power lanes that we've been seeing, because as the game gets more and more heroes, the more deadly combos are going to be coming out. You're going to get more Shiv Kelvin level lanes. You're going to get more Vindicta Abrams style lanes that people try to play around, and also different strategies for ramping that up into having really good end game performance. So the more heroes that get added, the more that I think the draft depth is going to radically expand.
You bring up a really interesting point there about lane setups and these like S tier combos, as you coined them yesterday, with the Vindicta Abrams and the Kelvin Shiv. At some point, there's going to be so many heroes and so many like S tier or really high tier lane duos that it's not possible to ever break them up. There's not going to be enough bans in the game and enough picks in the game to prevent that. So I think that's another like layer to the draft that we haven't seen come into fruition just yet because of limited amount of heroes. But I do wonder when we get to like that 30 mark, 35 mark of heroes in deadlock, are we going to start to see more set lane comps every single time in these matches, and then will teams try to play around them? I think it's gonna be really like interesting adaptation to the drafts long term, and actually I'm really curious to see how teams will get around that in the future.
It's a lot that's going to evolve. I think we will look back on this era of deadlock a year or two from now and be like, whoa, this was just the beginning. And the levels of depth and complexity that are going to be added, because don't forget too, we're blessed with a pretty nice competitive scene right now in terms of the amount of teams are playing both EU and NA, but this is still a closed alpha. As the game grows, as we get an injection of more and more players, as you get closer to a more traditional release, a greater player pool means more teams scrimming, more teams playing, means that more things get figured out, more things get added to the idea of what it means to be a competitive deadlock player, a competitive deadlock team. And the amount of complexity in a game that's already, like, you look at the macro play in deadlock, you can easily make an argument that is one of the most complicated macro games to ever come out, just because of all the additional factors that you have to really consider, especially in the news changes that came out with soul allocation, which added another layer of complexity to even the early laning phase. There's a lot to digest here, Jason, and really, even at the very top end, we have only scratched the surface.
You know, we obviously are, you know, kind of feeling right now because we're still waiting for the draft to kick off. But ZP, I'm gonna throw something at you and let me know how it takes. You know, in a lot of MOBAs, you do have these other objectives that give like these permanent buffs to your team. Like in League of Legends, you have the dragons. In Dota, I actually don't know what it is because I've only played like 1 or 2 games of Dota, and I got wrecked in it. I wonder if we're ever going to have another objective added to the game that gives like those permanent gold statue buffs to your team more reliably, to create more of an advantage and create another area to fight over. Because at the moment, it's pretty much just, is Urn going to spawn? Okay, we wait for the Urn to fight. Is Rejuvenator up? Okay, maybe we look for Rejuvenator. We have only, in my eyes, like 2 global objectives that normally are actively fought over, because teams don't want to go for a push on towards walkers or go for a push on towards like the base objectives, because you can be caught off guard so easily and that you can easily be like snowballed against.
I think things will continue to evolve. I also think there's a world where you mentioned Dota. I haven't kept up with Dota in the very recent years, but historically for Dota, it was the runes in the river that would spawn, and you would get a significant buff from the river runes, which really isn't all that dissimilar from. It's not all that dissimilar from what we get right now in Deadlock with the buffs that spawn every 5 minutes. But we've been informed that the teams need a little bit more time, so we're gonna be heading to a break. When we come back, the first game of the playoffs will be underway. Virtus.pro taking on Thanos. All right, we are back here with One Win Bombshell Volume 5, getting ready, Jason, to get into our first playoff match, VP versus Thanos. And you know, Jason, as it turns out, when you're an NA player playing on an EU tournament, realistically, one of the key things you have to get in mind is your sleep schedule. And Lomain failed the assignment. Lomain is off to the wind, sleeping Z's, so far as anyone knows. And as a result, it's going to be a substitution coming in for Thanos. Tracks for Lomain.
Yeah. How nice do we want to be about this, TP? Is my question.
You know, I think we've kind of said the story as is. You know, the people can think what they want, but all I'll say is that NA players are not necessarily known for their reliability of sleep schedules, and you're getting a good example as to why. But getting into the draft here, Jason.
I meant more Trax subbing in for Lomain. I mean, not saying Trax is bad, but he's not going to be no Lomain. We saw him on Lash just constantly be a nuisance in some of these solo lanes. Like Lomain, one of the top players in North America. It's a very rough substitution, I think, coming in for Thanos. And I think in their eyes, maybe let's try to make this game as long as possible, so hopefully Lomain wakes up, we can bring him back in. But to go back into the draft here really quickly, ZP, something we talked a lot about before we actually got into this, before we went into break, was teams adapting their picks based off of what's been happening in the draft phase. And we know with Holiday banned and Paradox taken away, Thanos had to pick up a Bebop in their top 3. But obviously having Hoot in the team is definitely an advantage because he can play Bebop quite well.
I think they're going to hard prio the Bebop regardless. And I mean, part of that is because of Hoot, as you say. And they also hard prio the Yamato. So the way this worked out, VP certainly had first pick here, and Thanos decided to come in and back-to-back go for the Bebop Yamato for Hoot and Xeno, respectively. But overall in the draft, I mean, giving up Sinclair, Geist on the other end, there's a decent amount of power that's been given up here, and I do wonder for VP, do you take the Abrams right now? They have another pick after the Ivy. If you grab Abrams, you deny the Abrams Vindicta lane. If you don't grab it, I think Thanos is probably about to play it.
Will they, though? You sure? I don't know who would actually be playing the Abrams on their side. I mean, I guess Hydration could play it? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the hero pool situation, it's not like the most ideal, but if you're... I don't think Abrams is a hero that is so deep into the well that like someone on Thanos couldn't play it. I mean, there's a world where they don't, but when you look at what's available here in the draft, what's it called? Kelvin got banned early enough, so there's no worry of a Shiv Kelvin lane. Yeah. I mean, Thanos, hero pool-wise, Shiv would make a little bit more sense, but lane-wise, Abrams would make more sense, so... I don't know. I suppose we'll see.
Virtus Pro needs some damage. They need some really big damage here because they have like 3 pseudo supports with the Ivy, unless it's Gun Ivy, which you know Zergy can play, obviously. And then Sinclair, and then the Paradox on top of that. As they pick up a Calico, that's kind of leading me to believe they're going to be staying away from picking up an Infernus for some reason because they need something more frontliney, as they obviously have the Calico to pair with the Geist. But maybe I could be completely wrong, to be honest.
I mean, they still could go Infernus. It kind of depends on who is going to be... Who do we think is going to be in the Ivy here, given that they've picked Sinclair also? Is it going to be a Listic Sinclair? Is it going to be an Obikim Sinclair? Like, who is your Ivy player here, effectively? Is it going to be Obikim, or is it going to be...
I think...
Zergy?
Listic is going to be on Sinclair. I think Shard's probably at the moment going to be on Calico, which means Obikim's going to be on Ivy with D-Mob on Geist. I think that's the way they're currently trending. Obviously comes down to the last pick, right?
Oh no,
Furnace.
Thanos, what is you doing? What is going on here? Why are you last picking Warden into the Sinclair? I don't like this final pick from Thanos at all, Jason.
I mean, it's hard to have a clear mindset when you're up at 7 a.m. So maybe they didn't see it on the other side. No, I don't know. I mean, we're seeing how it's going to work out. It's obviously a field day for Listic because he's going to have that to steal away quite consistently. He can match up against Mirage as well, prevent Mirage from solo pushing or split pushing when they're trying to use an objective. But if we see the Infernus or 7 come in here for Virtus Pro, we can safe to say who's going to be on what for VP side. But to see, Thanos put so much pressure on confirming in the Bebop for Hoot, confirming in the Yamato for Xeno, I think that's like their linchpin to winning. So to me, it's like they need to hope to have a strong early game in this mid lane to have success.
Well, think we got our answer here, Jason. It is going to be Zergy on the Ivy. If you're going to be last picking Viscous, because there's no other hero in this VP draft that you would expect Zergy to be on. I mean, I think technically he has played Geist before, but would you expect Zergy to be on Geist in this meta? It's a little unlikely to me.
I mean, I'm trying to think. Let me go look at my handy dandy database real quick. Who normally plays the Viscous for Virtus Pro? Because I want to say it's Shark. Yeah, he plays that. He's at 5 picks of it. D-Mob, does he play it? He's played it 6 times.
D-Mob has played Viscous before.
Yeah, so 6 times for him, 5 times for Shark. So there technically is a world where Zergy still could be on Geist in this. I mean, I don't know how likely it's going to be, but again, that's the flexibility of their roster, which makes them so sick.
Meanwhile, look at the Thanos comp. Dear God, you are effectively very, very reliant on Hoot just being a monster on the Bebop. And I would say low main on the Vindicta, but low main ain't here. Low main is sleeping, getting the beauty rest in. And while low main may be back for the later matches here for Thanos, whether it be in the lower bracket or it be in the next match going up against Paravision, I don't know. I just, even if you have good times with the Bebop and Vindicta here, I really don't like the overall team fight picture now that you've gotten Warden versus Sinclair, because it's not that Warden can't get some value in those situations. It's that you've given an incredible weapon to the Sinclair, where Sinclair is already a really good hero to begin with.
Well, and Listic is also a damn good Sinclair on top of that. Like yesterday in their match up against One Win, the ultimates he was changing up to kind of facilitate the fights they needed were kind of crazy, because it takes so much like oversight into how the fights are going, so much oversight into where players are standing at that given point and their positions. I mean, it's still going to be a tough game no matter what for Thanos, because they already lost to Virtus Pro twice, and Virtus Pro to me are probably right now the best team in EU, excuse me. But then to also have to do it with a sub and then do it with a Warden up against Sinclair, it's definitely going to be a very tough time, ZP.
I think for me, a lot of this just kind of comes down to the Bebop lane. How well does Hoot play? Because look, as far as Bebop tier listing is concerned, we have sung a lot of the praises of D-Mov over time, but Hoot is also really good Bebop wise. I mean, you think back to character, or rather times like back on Maidong, where Maidong, a roster with its ups and downs, but they looked vastly improved during some of the tournament play they had after adding Hoot and being able to play Bebop, to the point that they eventually got to the point that teams would just ban Bebop against them all the time to remove that factor completely.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to be so good at a hero that you force teams to like focus ban it against you. And it's not even like, okay, if you have someone who's like insanely good on Pocket back before the nerfs, I could understand. If there's someone insanely good on Yamato, I could understand. But like Bebop is like one of those heroes that he doesn't, by himself, I don't even know how I want to describe the ZP, because it's not like a hyper carry hero, but it's someone who can have like ridiculous impact if you keep hitting these hooks towards the later stages of the game. But at the same point, you kind of need a team to play around that successfully to make it work. Like, it's not going to be successful on its own, just hitting hooks whenever you want to. You have to have a team who knows how to play around the Bebop and how to elevate those picks into actual kills.
Now, for those who are just wondering, we are just waiting for the players to get into the game. There may be a world here where, Thanos is kind of, waiting a little bit before fully committing. I believe the rule is they have to be in the lobby by about the 35 on the hour, or they auto lose a map effectively. But when you're waiting on a player to wake up, there is kind of an incentive, Jason, to drag your feet a little bit. Or as you alluded to, if they're losing this game, there's a world where there's a tangible benefit to just try and drag out the game as long as possible, where this may be one of those games where when you see them potentially down 20 or 30K, you don't see them on the map at all. You just see them playing the most defensive deadlock you've ever seen in your life, because essentially there's an incentive to extend the game for out-of-game reasons, effectively.
I think low main's playing like the forehead play. He's like, he wants to do the hard route back into this. He wants to do the comeback story of like, oh, you know, I was sleeping, and he comes back into the next match or the next series, and he goes like 20-0, and then it's the comeback tale for Thanos coming in from the lower bracket to win the whole thing. Obviously, I'm BSing quite a bit here. I'm just trying to pick up some sort of reason for it. But yeah, I don't know. Realistically, I don't think they're gonna try to drag the game out. I don't even know realistically in the rule set if they're allowed to change him back into match 2, honestly.
Well, I guess it depends on what the rules are for subs in general, and if the tournament allowed for deeper rosters, because in theory, if you just had like a deeper roster, changing from map to map wouldn't be that big of a deal. Although I guess it would depend also like when you would have to lock in the player. Do you have to lock in the roster before draft? Can you lock in the roster post draft? You know, not a ton of issues that we've had to reliably deal with this early in the scene, but could be a thing to deal with in the future. But we are in game. Any stalling is over, and for those who are just tuning on in, a change here for Thanos. Low main still sleeping, therefore Trax is in the game.
Who's he gonna be on is my question. And already off the bat on this left-hand side, you can see Virtus Pro immediately. See, there we go, Zergy's gonna be on the guy. I feel so smart sometimes. It happened, but they're being so aggressive on the left-hand side. Track's gonna be over on the Vindicta. That's gonna be, I mean, that's a hero you really have to play well here if you want to have that level of impact. And hydration gonna be the Warden. I mean, if anything, if you're gonna think of a Warden player in NA, you're gonna think of hydration. It's just gonna be tough to pull up, as you were mentioning before, against Listic when we get to these team fights.
Yeah, I mean, I would trust hydration to be able to play in a way that you get good economy valuation, but on the same note, it's just the team fights are going to be difficult because you've inherently hyper boosted Listic's value on the Sinclair, where Sinclair's order of priority in any team fight, Jason, is going to be go to Warden, steal his power. And also, speaking of power going down right now, Rocker having a real rough start right now in the right lane. It's a Shiv Mirage lane and is just getting vastly outpoked by a Geist Viscous lane.
I don't think that's going to be necessarily like too surprising with how the lanes are playing out, because we did put a lot of the emphasis for Thanos on the success of their middle lane with Hoot and Xeno. They really need to start hitting these hooks and start opening up some plays here and open up some kills, because the snowball is going to be very difficult against them. You're up against a team on, you know, good ping. You're up against one of the best, you know, I would say the best macro team in the world right now in Virtus Pro. And if Virtus Pro have a strong early game, it's only to get more difficult when they're on.
Well, the hook connecting there, putting Obakim in a world of hurt. And, you know, in the early lane phase, even if you don't get an immediate kill, look at what you get just from that hook there. You get more presence, you get to push the lane up more aggressively, and you get extra damage on the tower. Health is such a resource on the same value, almost really, as souls in the first 5 minutes of the game, just because of how it impacts what you're able to do in keeping the lane up and getting more Guardian damage in.
Yeah, good point. If you think about like resources overall, where the lanes and the dive are going to be coming in on the left-hand side. And hydration is going to be the first to go down, with Trax to follow thereafter. Shark and Listic off to a strong start here. Already have the Guardian down to below half HP here. ZP, this is going to be a very early Guardian take.
That's actually ridiculous. The fact that the Guardian is this low at 3 minutes, this is how snowballs just get critical mass super early into the game. Oh my god, that Guardian's almost dead, Jason. It is literally almost gone. It's dead. A 3-minute Guardian for VP. Oh boy, not the start you want, especially when you're playing Warden, arguably the most farm-dependent hero in the game, or if not the, then at least top 3.
And I don't imagine that Virtus Pro are going to let hydration just free farm in that lane either. If we see like Thanos try to respawn by sending Trax over to the mid lane and look for some more ganks. I mean, to be fair, the hook into a tether could be quite deadly.
Jason, Listic already has audience participation and can run Warden down with his own ult before he himself even has the ult. Like, the real magic trick is changing the world before the other person has even put on their pants.
Put on their pants. Sorry, that just cut me off. And while he's joined in the fight in towards middle, he's at 3.4k. They're going hyper beam and Hoot's like, what the hell is happening? He immediately backs away. They're applying the pressure on the middle lane, and now this Guardian's gonna take a lot of damage.
Who's just like, I haven't even researched that yet, man. What is going on? And I think this is pretty smart from we're seeing from VP, where they're saying, also, Jason, 4 minutes in, this Calco is going to get really ahead of the game.
Yeah, very far ahead.
Sharik is about to get rich. He's about to get paid.
He already is. 3.8. I mean, I think VP right now, they have to be careful because once that lane's shoved on the left-hand side, which I'm assuming that hydration tracks are going to be doing, they're immediately going for ganks on towards middle. So VP have to kind of respect this and have to be very cautious of these ganks coming through. But then again, when you do that, you're splitting souls quite heavily between 4 players now instead of the 2.
Also, I think Shriek is doing his best to try and freeze as much as possible and just let the lanes fight each other. Thanos actually lost a huge amount of farm on the left lane by just abandoning it. This is economy malpractice that is going on for Thanos at the moment, and this could lead to a very quick start to our playoff day.
Towards the 5k, he's going to be ganking middle. There's 3 lonely souls for him to take. I don't see Thanos escaping this scot-free. I don't see every single person staying alive. There's a Stone Hyper Beam coming in yet again. Focused on the track. Xeno's going to go down even after the Shadow Form transformation.
That's Deadman Guardian.
Hyper Beam versus Hyper Beam.
That's 2, Jason, it's going to be 2 Guardians dead by about 6 minutes here. Let alone all the eliminations that are coming on in. And this is effectively, this really got kicked off because of how badly the left lane lost. Where also, you know, I'm not going to try and throw too much shade, but that was also the lane tracks in. That was the Vindictive Warden lane. And it just feels like VP isolated the weak spot. It's like, oh, you guys sub on here? There's no low main? Yeah, we're going to do terrible, terrible things in this lane. Last stand coming out from Hydration, and Calco just going to casually sidestep right now, Jason.
I mean, Guardian's still relatively low. Funny enough, I didn't realize it actually got this low in HP. And you know, Hydration, he's trying to get the Guardian down for some extra souls for his side, but he still just ended up feeding over more and more souls over to Shark at 6,000 now, 6 minutes in. He's going to go on the counter push for Hydration, the 1v1. And Thanos, they've actually grouped up on this right-hand side looking for this Guardian. I mean, they're trying to get some sort of income back on their side because they're down 8k here 6 minutes in, ZP.
It's down 8k, and you look at who has the income. That is the most fed cat we've ever seen. Also, Trash is just getting run down by Listic here in the middle lane. Like, that is horrible.
I've never seen.
Moving off here to the right side, the one lane that's a little bit pushed up in Towns' favor, but Geist just draining Rocker dry. And Zergy just gets walk over from downtown, takes down Rocker.
I've never seen a stolen assassination used before like that. Ridiculous stuff from Listic. Yeah, the downtown shot, the Kobe coming in from Zergy. And it's still continuing to push with 3 players to defend. Another stolen Hyper Beam. Listic just has it out for Hoot. I think that's what 3 out of the 4 audience participations have been Hyper Beam so far.
They said I could be anything, so I wanted to become a robot with a really big laser. Is Listic's MO when he woke up this morning.
Oh, look at Shark, 9k. Hydration at 6. I'm surprised I should see Shark not look for more kills onto Hydration with that kind of soul advantage.
It's a pretty big edge right now that we're seeing from BP, and the fact that they've been able to funnel so much farm into Shriek, where, I mean, you saw how it happened. They got the Guardian down to begin with, that it just said, Listic, you roam now.
Oh, that block coming through. Zergy confirming another kill. This lead's continuing to grow up to 10k now. The right-hand Guardian's going to fall momentarily as they're still applying the pressure onto Vindicta, forcing Trax back. It's going to be 3 Guardians to 0 now for Virtus Pro. And that lead's continuing to grow. This is this is a very tough game. I mean, Xeno's on 5k, and he's up against players who have, you know, 1 to 5,000 more souls than him.
Well, if you talk about meta objectives right now, too, Jason, remember that low main is still sleeping. Ideally, they would like to get low main in for another map, if possible. But you're not buying a lot of time. You're not getting much beauty sleep at the moment if you are Thanos. Because the rate this game is going, in another 10 minutes, we're going to be on the map too.
And we're going to have already a 5k lead in that second map. Just kidding. I don't want to touch
well, you know, some of the best comedy is rooted in truth, Jason, is what we're seeing right now. Because, look, you run a Bebop comp. Ideally, your Bebop comp wants to get ahead or at least be even early. And even if Hoot lands a hook right now, is Hoot going to be able to get a kill off of it, Jason? Probably not. And it got, again, just, okay. At this point, I feel like Listic has just put a tracker on Hoot's phone just to go over there and just get a sweet, sweet taste of the Bebop power every time audience participation is up.
He's just looking for, yeah, he's just looking for who. He's like, okay, come on, I need my hyper beam. Come on, I need my fix.
I need it,
He's
man.
gotta kill with it,
I
though.
need it. I need the power. Come on, man. You know I'm good for it.
Maybe he has like a Goku mod or something. He likes to Kamehameha every time. That'd be so sick. Ern's gonna be spawning as well as the buffs. You can see both teams still actually looking to contest this left-hand side. So honestly, if you're Thanos, you have to give it away completely, and that should be risk for securing both buffs and looking for a fight off the back of this.
Meanwhile, who just trying the runaway in middle, instead gifting a 700 soul bag back their ways, you know, getting it swapped on in. The possibility of a KLS running afoul of Xeno here. This is a battle that Yamato wins if KLS doesn't get any help. Still have Xeno chasing on down. And it's Trax actually going to get the kill, who is just able to pop on in. So, you know, one trade out for Thanos, but Jason, doesn't matter right now.
Yeah, it's still 15k between the two. Yeah, with D-Mob going down, a little bit of a catch-up out of Thanos. So the Urn, it most certainly should be ran over here momentarily. Even have Shark going to the back then looking for Trax, and that's going to be the Gloom Bomb to finish off Vindicta once again. But because the Urn was dropped, it is technically going back towards the spawn, so it's not like VP are going to turn this one in.
Xeno trying to get the first Guardian down here. Or Thanos. Thanos getting it, but they have a long way to go here, Jason. And the problem is the flow of battle has been so immensely VP-sided at the moment, where VP effectively picks a spot on the map, rolls out there with 2 or 3 people, and can instantly just do whatever they want. Where, I mean, a Geist Life Thread should not be doing this much damage at 10 minutes relative to the other person's HP bar, but this is where we're at.
Yeah, he's at 11,000 soul suits at 7, getting close to just doubling the income out of Hoot, not to mention that stat territory. The Urn has been picked up once again and has been ran over and gets cubed up for the guaranteed turn-in. So that leads going to continue to grow up to 18,000, and honestly, these walkers going to be the main focus here now for VP. And yeah, you're not going to stop him. I don't know what to say about this VP. It's hard for me to stay in professional mode with how one-sided this game is.
I think the one interesting part is that, you know, Listic's obsession with, you know, just finding Hoot repeatedly. We haven't seen a cloned Last Stand yet. Oh, look at this. Hoot's just like, I know you want another taste. Pulls him on in, and surprisingly, we don't see the audience participation onto Hyper Beam again. But okay, Gergie under trouble here. No swap. Ends up falling down. So again, one little pick off here from Thanos, but the amount that they have to continue to convert on picks right now is a lot, Jason, to even remotely get into the conversation of maybe there's a shot.
And they're going to catch up Trax on the left side, as you can see on the mini-map. And they're probably going to push that walker off the back of the 2. They still managed to kill Xeno over towards the right. Like the Paradox swap had come through. And the dash to get away, and Rocker only at 9k. You're playing against people who have so many more souls than you that realistically you're not going to escape. And VP, I feel like they're just playing with their food here.
I think we do have to just kind of review how we got to this point, which was that Thanos ran a Vindicta Warden lane, and the lane lost so bad on the left-hand side to the Sinclair Calico that they lost Guardian in 3 minutes, and then it opened up Sinclair to get a super quick ult online, start roaming, and allowed them to just feed Sharik to unbelievable levels. That's how this all went down, Jason. That's how all of this started.
Yeah. You said they lost badly. I said they lost very quickly. Technically the same thing. This one goes in hand-to-hand with another. You have the big fight actually break on this left-hand side. Virtus Pro going to be down players when it comes to the man advantage. Definitely favoring Thanos, but not for much longer. As they immediately pick up the 2 kills, go to the chase Shark. We'll have into the shadows up momentarily. Does a big chunk of damage to those 2. They were trying to buy some time for some reinforcements to come through, but I don't even know what's going on here with D-Mob. He's just having a good time here as the ball.
Yeah, he's having a ball, literally.
Man, what skins could they do for this? I'm really curious.
I mean, I think the fan favorite is people would just be okay with the recolor and bringing the white business.
No. I want to go beyond recolors here. I'm thinking like when he goes into goo ball form, it's like a big jello mold and you see like pieces of fruit inside of him.
You know, one of my favorite memories from the Overwatch days was back when they just added in team colors, and Achilleos was talking with, at that point, one of the lead, members of Team 4. That was kind of the lead interaction between the dev team and the casters. And she literally says, like, just so you know, Seth, if you make any jokes about White Torbjorn, you're fired. And, just specifically a comment he had made about Torb's ult. But, that's just where it was, Jason. But take a look here. Right now, Listic, the last stand, Poppy coming on out saying, I can do this better than you. Over the hydration, melts him on down.
Zeno gets one. Again, one's not going to save you when you're down 22,000. I actually just realized I think the stream's like 30 seconds behind us today, not the 2 minutes from yesterday. So the interaction got a little bit quicker. Zeno's going to be diving in against Sergey. Hey, gets the kill. We're not going to go crazy about this until we see that soul differential be down to about 10k. Because VP, I mean, they can fight like 4v6 and still win out in these trades. At least the urn has been picked up by Hoot, who's running over quickly to go for the turn in. Obikim may be able to contest in time. Well, as we see with Thanos backing away from the actual rush, there's not going to be a turn in just yet.
Also, so far, I mean, VP's mostly just been playing the burn down objectives. They've still been pretty smart with their lead. They haven't gone into silly mode, and they go, okay, we can turn in the urn. We get stuff a little bit closer, but we are going to go mid boss.
Oh my gosh.
The interesting thing here is that, okay, Zeno doesn't have Shadow Transformation. So even if Thanos was somehow able to rotate over quickly, they don't have one of their greatest tools to go for a steal. So it's going to be cleanly taken here by VP, and it's back to work here, Jason. Number one priority, as you can see on the rotation, they're just going to go over to the left lane, look to get the last walker down, add to their flex slots.
Even though how badly the initial game went for hydration, he's still up to 17,000 souls. He's actually, pretty far ahead of his team, and he's pretty remotely close to his opponents. But you don't want to see Warden close at this point. You want to see a Warden very far ahead. And considering you have to deal with Listic at 19k, who does have large participation, would be very difficult. This last walker, yeah, it's gonna fall very, very quickly. And if you're Thanos in the vicinity, you better run. Because the chase will be coming through out of Virtus Pro. Michaelis doesn't have the power to just pop up, just used it right before. They're continuing to just go straight into the base.
Yeah, I mean, why not? Why would you stop at this point? You are so ridiculously far ahead that it wouldn't really make sense. And now 16 or almost 17 minutes into the game, it's real tough because we're in. And I don't know. I looked at the wrong stream, but we're over 17 minutes.
It's about time we get a quick stomp here, ZP, to be fair. Team Moore and Metro can definitely get the better end of that too, or a better end of that when it comes to how the games get played out. They're still sticking around Virtus Pro. They want to finish off the game here and get the first map of the series underway. And Waynes, they will be going up 1-0 in this best of three, no longer the best of three territories. They need to win out the two to advance on further, where they have Paravision currently waiting for the winner of this series.
Well, there may be no effective difference because we play two maps no matter what in the group stage.